Okay, we are back. I'm going to skip the intro to the Grateful Ducks podcast this week because we had a internet issue. Um, you guys know the drill. Welcome back. I'm your host, Brewhan Luke. Um, that intro was sweet, though. You know, all the Grateful Ducks stuff. Shout out to Yumper. That was a great video intro. On today's episode, now that we are live and cooking, and it seems like we're good to go, we're going to recap week 5. We'll recap the Ducks game really quick. We will get into the latest AP poll, the top 25. I have some thoughts there. We'll go through that and have a quick discussion there. And we'll get into some Heisman talk. We haven't really done enough Heisman Trophy talk yet this season, so we'll get started with that. And we'll go into week 6 when I'm going to preview week 6. We'll have some conversations about some games of note, but we won't do a full preview because the plan is to do a Grateful Ducks tailgate episode later this week. Whether it's recorded or live will be determined later on. Most likely it'll be a recorded episode that I can bring to you. And we'll work out the details on that. Keep the Twitter notifications on for that. While I have you here, make sure you smash the like button and subscribe, and we will get right into it here. So let's just start with this recap. Week 5, obviously, we got to start with talking Ducks, and Oregon made easy work of UCLA, one of the worst teams in the country, as we all know. Dylan Gabriel had a good connection here. Looks like he's found his number one receiver and got a good relationship built there with Tez Johnson. Moving forward, he had 11 catches, 100 plus yards, 2 touchdowns. The only score in this game for UCLA was on a pick 6 from Dylan Gabriel in the post-game press conference. He came in and stated, "Yeah, that was a dumb throw. I shouldn't have done that. We were right there in the red zone. I should have thrown it away and taken the point." So a 31-13 victory. Offensive line seems to be playing much better. Matthew Bedford still not playing for Oregon. Re-injured his knee in practice. Who knows when we will see him? Hopefully for the Ohio State game. But the positive is that without Matthew Bedford in, this offensive line has seemed to correct the mistakes from early on. The offense has seemingly gotten much better each week. And now they move on to face Michigan State on Friday night at 8 p.m. Central Time on Fox. We could go into a lot more details there, but we are a little behind schedule because of the internet issues. So we're going to just keep moving past that and get to the next game. This is, the Illini here. 21-7 fall to Penn State. Penn State ran all over the place. Illinois came out, took a quick 7-0 lead in the hostile whiteout type environment for Penn State in Happy Valley and got the crowd a little quiet early on, but then Penn State got it going, ran the ball for 200 plus yards. They had the dynamic duo of Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton doing their thing on the ground. I'm still unsure about this Penn State team as a whole. They could run the ball. Drew Aller doesn't look very good. Kind of reminds me of this Michigan team currently as well. Like, I don't know if they're just holding back and saving stuff for when they face Ohio State and when they go to USC, and they're kind of not opening up the playbook yet. We'll see. But very unlike Illinois defense to give up that many rushing yards on the ground. They've been playing really well overall. They remain in the top 25 this week, and we'll talk about that shortly. Luke Altmaier doing a phenomenal job still for Illinois. Threw his first interception of the year, but other than that, he's been great in year 2 under Coach Bielema and that staff. Next, we have to get to the absolute barn burner of a game. I thought this game was over at halftime. I should have known better than to ever doubt Georgia and Kirby Smart out. Holy cow. They came out and punched Georgia in the throat at home. They were up 21-0 in the first quarter and absolutely dominated. And we have to talk about this kid, Ryan Williams. And yes, Ryan Williams is a kid. I will not say his age. I will not use that number that everybody on national TV keeps saying because of the fact that, man, everybody's saying it. Everybody knows by now. So let's just put it into perspective. Ryan Williams cannot go down the street to the gas station and buy a pack of cigarettes. Ryan Williams cannot legally go and gamble on sports. That also being said, you cannot gamble on Ryan Williams legally. So if you go to your local sports book or open up your app on FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever it might be right now, you will not find Ryan Williams' name in any prop bets. You will not find him in any Heisman odds anywhere. You can find it offshore. I'm sure of it. I don't know from personal experience, but I can tell you, you could probably find some Ryan Williams bets offshore if that's the kind of thing you're into. But you cannot make bets on this guy who, you know, should still be a senior in high school, but dominated Georgia. Speaking of Georgia, I do have some concerns about this team. Yeah, they lost to Alabama on the road. They're still a very, very good SEC team, but the defensive back play was atrocious. I mean, give all the credit in the world to Ryan Williams and Jalen Milroe and Kalen DeBoer and that staff. They've got things figured out. They looked outstanding. I'm unsure about this Georgia defense. They lost Fran Brown, their defensive backs coach, to Syracuse. He's the head coach at Syracuse now. Maybe that comes into play. Carson Beck at times looked like the dude, but when it was time to try to slam the door shut, there were some questionable throws, some questionable plays. I went from thinking that Carson Beck is a top 5 pick in the draft to wondering if he's going to be a first round pick. He probably still will. He'll bounce back, and Georgia will bounce back. But you go from having to sneak past Kentucky, who's a very good team, and then Alabama had their way with you in the first half of this game, and you had to come crawling back and make all these adjustments to get back into the game. And then you take the lead, and then your defense coughs it back up right away. That's not Georgia football. That's not the Georgia football we've seen for the last 5 years. There's still a playoff contender with a 12-team playoff. I'm just unsure of if they're going to be that team to win a national championship this year. Like, they can make the playoffs, but their last 2 games, they've looked very beatable. If they're beatable in the SEC, maybe Ohio State has a chance to beat them. Maybe another school outside of the Big Ten has a chance to beat them. I don't know. Time will tell. Maybe things get better as the season progresses for Georgia. But these last few weeks, they don't look like Georgia football. Okay. That's enough about last week. Let's talk about the top 25 here. Coming in at number 25, UNLV, but also not on this graphic, Texas A&M. We'll talk about both of those teams shortly. I have a theory as to why Texas A&M is ranked. They're a good team. They're a respectable team, but they have a big game this week, and I think there's a reason why the AP poll voters kind of overlooked them, and then they realized, oh, actually, they do belong in the AP poll. Illinois, we already discussed. They stay in the poll at number 24, so that shows that the AP voters still think highly of the Big Ten and the layout there and how things are looking for the Big Ten, and they still respect Illinois' performance, and they respect their win over Nebraska as well. And all of that, I think they value their resume currently. Indiana at 5-0. They don't look now, but they could start out 9-0. They've got a chance to really make a run and potentially be a playoff contender. Kurt Cignetti in year 1 with this team, I would not be surprised if they finish 10-2, 9-3. I mean, they could go start the year 9-0. Louisville fell to Notre Dame, stays in the rankings. Boise State, we're going to have to talk about them shortly here. Man, that Boise State UNLV game later in the year is going to be a banger. We're going to talk a lot about Boise State here when we get to the Heisman Watch. Kansas State bounced back, took care of Oklahoma State pretty easily after that loss at BYU. Oklahoma, I'm not sure what's going on. They're ranked because it's early in the year. They had a good preseason ranking. Moving on, Utah, same thing without Cam Rising. We'll see. This is that Big 12 stretch here of teams that are just like, who wants to win the Big 12? Does anybody want to step up and be that team and that's going to be dominating and get a first round bye, because that's Big 12 is only going to get one team. And then look at this stretch here. They're all right there in a row: 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. All five of those Big 12 teams, only one of them will make the playoff, is what it's looking like currently. Clemson is starting to look like after that Georgia game, they're starting to really bounce back and figure things out. Probably Miami's biggest challenge to winning the ACC. Virginia Tech has been a huge disappointment. We'll get to the Miami game shortly once we get up to them. Notre Dame trending in the right direction with that big win over Louisville. Louisville's a very, very good team. That was a big, much needed win for Notre Dame. They could not afford to lose that. They look like they can go on a big run until they face USC the last game of the season. You don't want to have any slip-ups against like a Georgia Tech here in the middle of the pack, but all eyes should be on that Notre Dame USC game at the end of the year. LSU, I guess. Ole Miss falls to Kentucky. Kentucky, really, they should be knocking on the door being ranked after beating Ole Miss, but maybe Ole Miss is on fraud watch. We're going to talk about fraud watch here in a second. USC is not on fraud alert. They had a bad loss to Michigan, and that's the only reason why Michigan is ranked ahead of them currently. But they bounced back against Wisconsin at home and shut down Wisconsin in the second half of that game and really just took it to them. Miller Moss looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the country, if not the best quarterback in the Big Ten. I mean, he's right up there in the mix. Michigan and Mizzou, for me, are on fraud watch. We're going to talk more about fraud watch, however you want to say it. We'll talk about Mizzou coming up, and as we talk about how they are still undefeated and in the top 10. And Michigan, God, they got blown out by Texas and snuck past a good USC team at home, but that offense has a lot of problems. Miami coming in at number 8. Here's what I'll say about Miami. Did they win that game? Yes. Was the right call made in that game? I don't think so. So if that video review, the ruling on the field was a touchdown, and then they decided it felt like 10 minutes under replay review that it needed to be overturned, and it was an incomplete pass, and Miami wins the game after the Virginia Tech Hail Mary at the end. Virginia Tech got robbed. I think there was a little bit of ACC refs or college football refs shenanigans to make sure, hey, this is the best chance at the ACC to make a statement and go on a run here to get into the college football playoff and be a serious contender. We can't afford to have a Miami loss right here. I feel like that was being told in the headset, and nobody really blinked an eye. But, man, the call on the field, there's no way that should have been overturned. They ruled it a touchdown, and I didn't see anything there that said, yeah, that's an incomplete pass. And if it was an incomplete pass, video review, it should have still remained an incomplete pass if you go the other way around. So if you say, well, Luke, if they ruled it an incomplete pass on the field and then they reversed call there, would you still be pissed off? Yes, I would. Because there's no evidence. There was inconclusive evidence there to reverse the call. So if it was the other way around and they said incomplete pass and they needed to take it to video review and then they called it a touchdown, I would have the same issue with it. But that's not the case. Penn State, I'm still not sure if they are going to be a top 10 team when it's all said and done. The Ducks at number 6, they seem to be righting the ship, and I think they're correctly ranked right here at this point in time. Everything is gearing up for that Ohio State game in 2 weeks on one of the best weekends of college football of the year. Georgia falls down to number 5. I think that's correct. I think Tennessee and Georgia, if they were to face head-to-head right now, I love Tennessee in that game, the way Georgia's looked for 2 weeks in a row now. Ohio State at 3, Texas at 2, Alabama at 1. If you were to ask me who my number 1 team is in the country is right now between Alabama and Texas, obviously you got to go with Alabama and Kalen DeBoer and what they just did to this Georgia team. Texas has a very strong case at number 2 to still remain number 1. I just think that their Michigan win is not going to look as strong, and I think that's why the voters put them back down at number 2, because Alabama's win is a significantly stronger win than what Texas's win is going to be down the road in November. I believe the first real rankings, the only rankings that matter, the college football playoff rankings, are the only ones that really matter down the stretch. I think Michigan's going to be ranked a lot lower than Georgia, and that's where this AP poll may line up with this college football playoff committee's rankings. So this is fairly accurate. There's some teams that need to be shifted around, and I think number 9 and number 10, I get it. Michigan beat USC. I think you're going to see a significant change in these polls in the next few weeks. So moving on, let's talk Heisman. Okay, so I've got a few Heisman Trophy candidates. First one we got to talk about is Ashton Jeanty. Let me pull up his stat line for you. At this point in the season, he's played in 4 games so far. Okay. And yeah, he's Boise State. A lot of people are like, really? Boise State running back? If you haven't watched him play, well, first of all, if you didn't watch him play, then you missed the Oregon game when the Boise State went up against Oregon. Shame on you for not watching the Ducks on a national stage, even though it was a late night game. 4 games in, 82 carries, already 845 yards and 13 touchdowns. Okay, now the next question is going to be, well, who did he play? Georgia Southern, Oregon, Portland State, and Washington State. Okay, each game, Georgia Southern, 267 yards. Okay, well, it's Georgia Southern. Next game, Oregon, 192 yards. Through 2 games, he has 9 touchdowns. Game 3 against Portland State, 127 yards. And then last weekend, 259 yards and another 4 touchdowns against Washington State. And then you're going to see Boise State play UNLV. It really looks like Boise State's going to be that team that heads towards the at-large bid for the Group of 5 team led by this dude. He might set the all-time rushing record in college football history. He might set the all-time rushing touchdowns record as well. I mean, he's geared towards 3,000 plus yards on the season and 30 plus touchdowns on the season. You have to watch this guy play. It's that simple. If you're not watching, if you see Boise State is on your team, on your screen somewhere, or if you're able to catch a Boise State broadcast, you need to tune in. I think there's no reason why this guy shouldn't be in New York in December. Next up, here's what you need to know. And I came to this realization over the weekend and thought about it more yesterday and today. I think it's time to cut Coach Prime and Colorado football some slack. They were overhyped last year and they got blown out in almost every game. They started out great and then they really, they fell apart. They still don't have a very good defense, but it's improving. Their offensive line is improving. Shador is looking better each week. And then you have this man, number 12, Travis Hunter. He is the best player in the country. He's my current pick, and I'm going to roll with him because I put a future play on him. I also put one on Ashton Jeanty, but that's a different story. But Travis Hunter is the guy that should win the Heisman Trophy in 2024. Yes, you have Jalen Milroe. Yes, you have Nico Iamaleava from Tennessee. I think they also belong in New York, especially after what Milroe did this weekend against Georgia. But Travis Hunter is doing unheard of things in college football. He's on the field the entire game, other than some special teams plays. He's playing wide receiver at an elite level. He's playing defensive back at an elite level, getting interceptions, getting 100 plus yards and 1 or 2 plus touchdowns a game on the field the entire game. This is a first round pick, probably a top 10 pick in the draft next year, if not higher. Um, I think this is a year like last year, the Heisman committee did what I think ended up being the right thing and gave the award to the best player in the country, not the best player on the best team, which they've done in the past. Given the award to Jaden Daniels over, a Michael Penix and a Bo Nix who were battling for a conference title and a national championship. It doesn't have to be a team that makes the playoffs. But Colorado's in the Big 12. And next week, not this week, but next week, they play Kansas State coming off of a bye. And maybe Colorado pulls off a win at home. And suddenly they're 5-1. And now they're looking at potentially being a 2-loss team playing for the Big 12 championship. And then is Colorado going to find their way into the college football playoff and get a bye as a Big 12 champion? Iowa State probably has something to say about that. But I'm starting to scale back on my don't buy into the Colorado hype. They're starting to look like a pretty good team week by week and getting better and better. And they got one of the best quarterbacks in the country and the best player in the entire country. They might be able to pull this off if their defense plays just good enough, plays average football, and you trust in Travis Hunter and Shadur and the rest of that offensive line to get things going. This is the guy that should win the Heisman. I also think, like I said, Nico and Jalen Milroe should be there. Cam Ward right now is still one of the favorites to win the Heisman. I think when push comes to shove, I don't think he will be there. When you have these guys that are these four are more worthy candidates. Let's move on to just a quick look at Week 6 preview. I'm not going to go into a deep dive. Like I said, tune into the Grateful Ducks tailgate later this week. I just want to talk about some teams, undefeated teams. There's still, I think, 18 or 19 teams in college football that are currently undefeated. And what you need to look at is who could potentially go down and no longer be undefeated this week. So let's first go to UNLV. And they made that quarterback change after Sluka decided to bail. I have thoughts on that. That's going to be saved for another day and time. Both sides are guilty on that regard as far as Sluka and UNLV. They looked really good last week against Fresno State at home. Now they get Syracuse. So you get an ACC opponent coming to Vegas at Allegiant Stadium. UNLV is a 6.5-point favorite. I will say this. Syracuse earlier this year at home took down an undefeated Georgia Tech. Fran Brown seems to be showing that he can prepare these guys to play every day. I would say that Syracuse will cover this 6.5-point spread, and I would not put it out of the realm of possibility that they pull off the win. They give UNLV their first loss. Kyle McCord at quarterback has seen a lot more high-profile, challenging environments to play in after being at Ohio State last year and being in a hostile environment, going up against Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, whatever it might be. I think Kyle McCord and Fran Brown and this Syracuse team have a really good shot at pulling off this upset. I'm not going to say the wrong team's favored. UNLV's 4-0. They've looked very good. But I really like the Syracuse side there. Moving on, one of the big games of the week. Again, Mizzou at Texas A&M. Let me make sure I got this one right. Just let me pull up the line here really quick because, again, Mizzou is a top 10 ranked team in the country. Texas A&M is tied in the AP poll at number 25 with UNLV. Shenanigans. They just want it. They want to have two SEC ranked teams face off. They can't have a week off without two ranked SEC teams playing each other unless it's that cupcake week before the rivalry week. Let's see. Mizzou. I kind of think they're pretenders. They are a 2-point dog at Texas A&M. I think this Texas A&M team is getting a little bit better each week. I just have been unimpressed. Like, there's a lot of hype between Brady Cook and Luther Burden and this Missouri team, and I haven't seen it this year, Brian. I want to see it, and I think they're still a top 10 team because they were right in the mix to be a top 10 team in preseason. But the results week by week and watching them play, they aren't to me playing like a top 10 team right now. I need to see, in order for me to buy into that, I need to see Missouri blow out Texas A&M. I need to see them blow out Texas A&M on the road at Kyle Field in a very challenging environment. It pains me to say it, but it's another undefeated team that could go down. SEC road game. And the last one for this week, the other undefeated team to keep an eye out for, Rutgers. They've looked awesome. They are fun to watch. They have a great defense, and they have, after Ashton Genty, I think they have the next best running back in the country, and Kyle Monangai. This dude can do it all. I mean, the way he runs downhill, he can shift, he can run out in the flat and be a pass catcher. He is very exciting, and I think that this Rutgers team is very good, but now they go to Nebraska. You think that, Nebraska, after that loss to Illinois, and now being unranked, okay, be 2.5, 3-point spread. No. Nebraska is a 7-point favorite at home to an undefeated Rutgers team. So you got Rutgers, Missouri, and UNLV. Those are the three undefeated teams that I think are most likely to no longer be undefeated after this weekend. I'm not going to rank them in order right now, but if I had to predict which one is most likely to be upset this week, I'm going to go with Rutgers. I think Rutgers losing to Nebraska will be the one that does happen. And the other two, I think, are very likely to keep an eye on from there. And then last but not least, we're just going to touch base again with the Ducks game. It's Friday night this week on Fox, 8 p.m. Central Time. They got Michigan State coming to Autzen Stadium. There's some familiar faces coming back to Eugene for this game. Michigan State's head coach, Jonathan Smith, left Oregon State. Now he's back in Eugene. So that's going to be a little bit of an intriguing storyline to follow. Aiden Childs, who was Oregon State's quarterback, got some reps in last year with DJU, also now returns to Eugene. Jonathan Smith was able to figure it out 2 years ago in Eugene and had a game plan to defeat Dan Lanning and this Oregon team. But this is a significantly different Oregon team than that team 2 years ago. Coach Lanning's learned a lot from them. And this Michigan State team's bad. They're really bad. I don't think it matters that Jonathan Smith knows how to prepare for this Oregon team and Dan Lanning, and he's got the experience from being at Oregon State. This Michigan State team's terrible. Oregon is a 24-point favorite at home. I think they've corrected a lot of their mistakes from earlier this year. So that'll do it for this week's episode of the Grateful Ducks podcast. Again, like I said, tune in later this week. We most likely will not be live to do the Grateful Ducks tailgate, but later this week we will do a recording previewing the rest of week 6 and what to look out for. May have that drop Friday night, but most likely not. It'll most likely air Saturday morning, so stay tuned there. I'm not sure when I'm going to record it. Hopefully I don't have any other internet outages like I did just earlier today. Stay tuned while I have you here. 8 p.m. tonight, Central Time, on the same studio channel, on the same YouTube channel, Brian S. from the Getting Drafty Pod is doing a draft on TV show theme songs, I believe. So that sounds like a really fun one. He's going to have Johnny, the Southside Bum from the Chicago Sports Bums on, and Sean Jankowski from Iowa, I guess, and what big White Sox fan. I don't know what else. Sean's just a wonderful human being to interact with and talk to. He's one of the nicest human beings you could possibly ever meet, and he's from Iowa, and he likes the White Sox, and he likes Iowa State football. He's a very big college football fan. Just a great guy. I'm very intrigued as to what he's going to bring to the table on that draft. There's some new merch out, some Halloween merch on the store. Is this it? No, that's not it. I don't know. That is this it? I think that's it. This is it, right? There's a shirt out somewhere with this logo, Penguin Voorhees. I think it's for sale somewhere in the merch store. I don't know. Brian, maybe little help there. Yeah. Let's see. Video. I'm gonna do this at the end here. It's on here somewhere. You know what? I'm gonna toss it over to Brian, who's gonna take the air here shortly. Um, and I'm sure he'll find the video. Uh, yeah. So it's on here somewhere. I just don't want to play the wrong video by mistake, and it's not there. So maybe Brian could find it while he sorts out and gets set up for his getting drafty pod. Stay tuned for that. Buy the Penguin Voorhees shirt, hoodie. Looks really cool. It's a great thing for Halloween. It should be here in time for Halloween. So check that out. And uh the post-game show is brought to you by Christ. I can't find it. The hell with it. That's exactly it. We'll see you next time. I'll have a recorded episode for a Grateful Ducks tailgate episode later this week. One of these days, I'm going to get some guests in here live when I have a little more time to prepare, but that's going to be down the stretch, like in November when it gets really into the thick of college football. But for now, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being patient with all my fucked up internet issues. We'll see you next time. Peace. Oh, and Sco Ducks. Fuck Michigan State.